السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. Welcome everyone. So, uh, you guys remember that last time we have started the first lesson in this theme, the third theme, first lesson, development. Okay, we have talked so much about development and we have divided um, or we have underlined the factors that make up the quality of life. If you guys remember, we said that many factors help with the quality of life, like the sanitation in this picture, like the the electricity grid reaching to places that do not have electricity. And today's lesson is the same, but we are going to talk about different sections of the lesson. For example, how can we measure a country is wealthy or not? How can we know if a country is poor? And these are measures that we are going to look into today in today's lesson. So, starting with the first chapter that we have to read, or the paragraph, get your pencil and highlighters to underline. So, measures of national income. Income. Income is the money the country is getting or making. One of the traditional indicators of a country's wealth, so here we need to underline, is the gross national product. So, what is the gross national product? It's simply the total value of goods and services produced. Okay, this is the definition. It's one way to calculate the gross national product, or the shortcut for this word, GMP. Okay, gross national product. You will also be able to find data for gross domestic product, GDP. GDP is like local, okay, the local income of a country, while this is the total value. And gross national income, GNI, it is reasonable that at this level of study to regard this as broadly similar measures. So they are all talking about the same thing, but maybe in different strategies to underline things like how much a country is different than the other, so we can compare. So we can compare. Okay. So as for the gross national product, GMP, the first thing that we can do is to calculate the total value of goods and services produced in a year. This will give us clear numbers of how wealthy a country is, plus income earned by country's residents. Every country has residents, the people. The people are called residents, but we are talking about specific residents, which are the foreign residents, that have the investment in this country. So this is considered as an income for this country, the investment of foreign residents, minus, so this is minus, we are taking off the numbers, income earned within the domestic economy by overseas residents. So if overseas residents make good trades in the country, that does not have to be calculated. It doesn't have to add in the numbers. We need to take those numbers out to have clear calculations. Here move to the next page, page 173. Figure 3.3, we have a world map of the countries and with their GMP in 2013. So here we can see that um, there are colors for countries that have high GMP, means their gross national product is very high. They are making a lot of economy. And the countries with the blue is the poorest, or countries that do not have income. For example, half of Africa is below 400 or below 6,000 to 400. It's a really low number for a country, nearly no income. They are just not making progress, not developing. That's why the country is poor. So start by reading the paragraph here. To take account for the different population of countries, the gross national product per capita is often used. So if we need to compare different populations, if we need to compare two different countries, we have to make into account to use gross national product per capita. Here, we can use this strategy to divide by the total population. Divide the GMP, the total GMP. So if a country makes a million GMP, we would divide that by the number of the population. We already had an example of this in the class about Saudi Arabia. So we have taken Saudi Arabia, for example, the GMP for Saudi Arabia is around 21,000 to 32,000. So how about we take the average GMP? Let's say 28,000 maybe. 28,000. Now we have to multiply because this is GMP per capita. We already divided. So how about we multiply 28,000 by the number of the population in this country, which is 30 million. We will get a number of the yearly income for this country. And it is a really accurate number. We will get 800 billion, which is very close to the yearly income of Saudi Arabia. So it is a statistical confirmation that this strategy works. Okay, the GMP per capita is working. It allows for better comparisons between countries, but there's one point that we need to get into soon. For example, the total GMP of China is greater than the UK, but the GMP per capita is much higher in the UK. However, such data do not take into account the way in which the cost of living can vary. So it does not matter if a country makes a billion and another country makes 10 billions. Maybe they are the same. Why? Because there is something called PPP, okay? Or as we can say, purchasing power parity. تكافؤ العملة الشرائية أو تكافؤ القيمة السوقية أو الشرائية تمام. What this means is, for example, a dollar buys much more in Bangladesh than it does in the USA. So let's say, for example, USA makes $1 billion a year, while Bangladesh makes $10 billion a year. Sorry, not $10 billion, but let's say 10 billion Bangladesh currency. We have to still take into consideration the purchasing power parity. A dollar can change from each country to what goods it can buy. Here we can see there is a chart to compare the PPP. For example, Qatar has a value of 127,000, and Togo, probably an African country, has only 1,550. It is clear to see where regions of high and low GMP per capita are located. He is referring to the map. Here we can see which countries are doing good and which are not. Also, the development gap between the world's wealthiest and poorest countries is huge. It is huge in result of the purchasing power parity. However, a major limitation of GMP and other data is that there's average figures for a country. So we have numbers that are in the middle, not so high and not so low. The way in which wealth is distributed within a country, in some countries, the gap between rich and poor is much greater than in the others. So this is also another aspect that we need to look into in regards of developments and in economy and also in quality of life. They are all together. They are all linked together. So some countries have a high gap between the rich and the poor. And some countries, even the rich and the poor, do not have as much gap as it is in this country. So maybe in the future, we are going to underline what are the reasons, how we can help to fix this issue. Second, how government invests the money at its disposal. So this is one aspect that is good in its way. For example, Cuba has a low GNP. It doesn't make much money, but high standards of health and education. It doesn't matter as much where or how much you make, but where do you put it or where do you spend it? So Cuba spends a lot of money on health and education, and these are high standards they follow by because these have been government priorities. It's the most important they have to have good health and good education. Moving to the last point we talked about today, which is literacy. So not only money makes a country developed, also education is an important factor for the country to develop. Okay, is undoubtedly a key to socio-economic development. So it is linked also in economic that the country has high standards of education. It can be defined as the process of acquiring knowledge. So if the people don't have knowledge, we cannot consider this country as developed. Understanding and skills, these are also aspects of education. Education has always been regarded as very important individual indicator of development, and it has figured prominently in aggregate measures. In big measures, adult literacy is one of the main ways in which differences in educational standards have been. So, adult literacy is one of the main ways in which differences in educational standards between countries can be shown. So we can make comparison between countries. Let's say in 2015, we have statistics now, the global adult literacy rate was 85%. It's a high number of literacy and people could not read or write in 2015. Sorry, uh, I mean, the opposite. 85% of the people were literate. They could read and they could write. While in African countries, the rate, such as Ethiopia, Chad, Niger, adult literacy was very low. It was below 50%. So 50% of the adults there could speak, could write and read, and the other 50% could not read and write. About 780 million adults worldwide are illiterate. They are illiterate. This is the term that we use for someone who can't read or can't write. A low adult literacy rate is a great obstacle to development. So this is something that stops a country from developing, low adult literacy. So we need the people to start learning to read and to write in order for the country to develop, in order for the socio-economic to increase. The World Bank has concluded that improving female literacy is one of the most fundamental achievements. So why female literacy? Maybe because Females are better at teaching. So if one of them learns to read and write, she could teach others to do as well. It's the most fundamental achievements for a developing nation to attain because so many aspects of development depend on it. So we depend on literate adults, especially females. For example, there is a very strong relationship between the extent of female literacy and infant and child morality rates because the females are often the type uh, of people to interact with infants and child or children's. So if the females that interact with infants are illiterate, the infants will not learn, they will not become literate. People who literate are able to access medical and other informations that will help them to a higher quality of life. See how literacy can help the quality of your life compared with those who are illiterate. So I think that we have covered the entire lesson today. If you have any questions, you can always come to me in class and ask me. As for now, we will stop here and continue inshallah next class. This is it for now. See you later.